The scariest warning about AI did not come from a short seller. It did not come from a tech bear. It came from the Bank for International Settlements, the institution people call the central bank of central banks. And here is the exact thing it said. On June 28th, the BIS published its 2026 annual economic report and placed AI investment sustainability on a list of just 4 threats serious enough to endanger the global economy. The other 3 were returning inflation, strained government finances, and growing financial instability. Let me put that in context. The BIS is not a hedge fund with a short position. It coordinates the world's central banks. It sets global banking standards. When it issues a warning, 63 central banks read it. Now, let me be very clear about what this means and what it does not mean. The BIS is not saying AI is fake. The technology is real. Productivity gains are documented. Task-level studies show time savings of 20 to 50%. The BIS said all of that too. But here is the key insight that most investors are missing. AI can be real and still be overfinanced. Railroads were real, the internet was real, housing was real. In every major boom, the technology can be legitimate, while the financial structure around it becomes dangerous. That is the risk today. I'm Phoebe with TradingKey. This video is part 1 of a 2-part series. Today, I am going to walk you through 4 hidden financial mechanisms the BIS is worried about. 4 layers of risk that do not show up in the earnings reports. 4 things that are building quietly underneath the most exciting technology story of our lifetime. By the end of this video, you will see the AI boom in a completely different way. This is not a doom video. It is a risk map. Because the investors who survive the AI cycle will not be the ones who blindly say AI is a bubble. And they will not be the ones who blindly say AI changes everything. They will be the ones who can separate real demand from financial engineering. Let's start with the first layer. And it is hidden inside something most investors never think about. Why today's earnings are borrowed from tomorrow. Here is the simple version of risk number 1. When a company builds a data center or buys AI infrastructure, the cash goes out immediately. That hurts free cash flow today. But the full cost does not hit earnings today. Instead, that spending goes onto the balance sheet as an asset. It sits there as construction in progress while the facility is being built. It moves into property and equipment when the asset goes live. And only after that does depreciation start showing up on the income statement, a portion of the cost charged as an expense each year over the useful life of the equipment. So, investors look at current earnings and see strong revenue, strong EPS, strong margins. But under the surface, the cash has already been spent. The accounting cost is waiting in the future. Think of it like buying a delivery truck for your business. You pay $100,000 on day 1. You do not write off $100,000 as a loss immediately. You write off $20,000 a year for 5 years. The truck is an asset on your books even though the money is already gone. AI infrastructure works exactly the same way. Now look at the actual numbers, because the scale here is what makes this dangerous. Across Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, and Oracle, AI infrastructure investment has already surpassed $1 trillion in 2025 and 2026 combined. Google's assets waiting to be put into service grew 55% in a single year. Meta's capital expenditure surged 84%. Oracle roughly doubled its AI investment in 2 years. Almost none of this has been depreciated yet. Morgan Stanley estimates that 4 major hyperscalers alone will absorb approximately $520 billion in cumulative depreciation over the next 3 years as this infrastructure comes online. For Google specifically, annual depreciation expense is projected to climb from roughly $21 billion today to approximately $78 billion by 2029. A 3-fold increase hitting the income statement in just 3 years. Now, depreciation will not bankrupt these companies. That is important. Depreciation is not cash leaving the business again. The cash already left when the assets were purchased. But here is why it still matters enormously for investors. High multiple tech stocks need a clean story. high growth, high margins, rising earnings per share. If AI depreciation starts compressing earnings faster than AI revenue scales, investors may not pay the same multiple anymore. That is how a stock can fall even if the company is still growing. The first risk is not bankruptcy. It is multiple compression. And for expensive AI stocks, multiple compression can be very painful. But that is only the first layer. Because these companies did not just spend their own money, they borrowed it. From self-funded growth machines to debt-dependent infrastructure. For most of the last decade, big tech had one of the best business models in the world. They were not just growth companies. They were self-funded growth companies. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta could fund expansion entirely from their own operations. They generated enormous operating cash flow. They did not need to borrow aggressively to grow. That capital efficiency was the single biggest reason investors paid premium valuations for these stocks. AI is now breaking that model. PIMCO, one of the largest bond investors on the planet, ran the numbers. In 2023, hyperscalers needed to allocate roughly 40% of their operating cash flow to cover all capital expenditures. Plenty of room left for investors. By 2026 and 2027, PIMCO estimates that number will reach 94%, meaning nearly every dollar these companies earn from running their businesses is being consumed by AI infrastructure spending before it reaches shareholders. Self-funding has effectively hit a wall. And once self-funding runs out, there is only one option. You borrow. Bank of America data shows that in 2025, the 5 largest hyperscalers issued approximately $121 billion in U.S. corporate bonds. That is more than 4 times their pre-AI annual average. According to JP Morgan, AI-related debt has already reached approximately $1.2 trillion and now represents the single largest sector in the entire U.S. investment-grade bond market, bigger than traditional banking. Over the next 5 years, the industry will likely need to issue an additional $1.5 trillion to keep the build-out going. People love to compare this to the railway boom. Great technology, massive infrastructure investment, transformative in the long run. But there is one critical difference almost nobody talks about. Railway debt was backed by physical land and steel tracks, hard assets that held value for decades. If a railroad failed, bondholders could seize the tracks and keep them running. AI infrastructure debt is backed primarily by servers and market expectations that AI will generate enough future revenue to service that debt. Servers depreciate fast, and expectations are not collateral. Once the AI boom depends on debt, the risk is no longer just in the stock market. It moves into the credit market. If revenue disappoints, credit spreads widen, financing costs rise, private lenders pull back, and the CapEx boom becomes an investment bust. That is the kind of chain reaction regulators worry about. But here is what makes this even more concerning. That $1.2 trillion invisible debt, that is not even the full picture. There is another layer of debt that is even bigger, and it has been deliberately designed to be invisible. How? Hundreds of billions in debt disappear from the balance sheet. Here is a question that should bother every investor who has looked at hyperscaler balance sheets. These companies are talking about trillion-dollar buildouts. They are spending faster than they generate cash, and yet their reported leverage ratios still look surprisingly healthy. How is that possible? The debt has been moved somewhere investors are not looking off the balance sheet entirely. The clearest real-world example is Meta's Hyperion project. Meta needed roughly $30 billion to build a massive AI data center in Louisiana. But adding that to its balance sheet would hurt its credit rating, raise leverage ratios, and make its financial statements look worse to investors. So instead, here is what actually happened. Meta and Blue Owl Capital set up a special purpose vehicle, or SPV. Think of it as a separate legal box. Blue Owl puts in most of the equity, $2.5 billion for an 80% stake. Meta puts in $500 million for 20%. This SPV then issues approximately $27 billion in bonds, rated A+, because Meta's creditworthiness is backing them. PIMCO purchased around $18 billion of those bonds. BlackRock invested over $3 billion. This became the largest single private debt transaction ever completed for a data center in history. The debt sits on the SPV's balance sheet, not Meta's. On Meta's own financial statements, the payments look like a lease, an operating expense, not long-term debt, not a liability that shows up in the leverage ratio. But economically, Meta has committed to being the long-term tenant of this facility. It provided what is described as a residual value guarantee, meaning if Meta exits the lease early, it must compensate investors for any shortfall. That is, in substance, a financial guarantee. The debt never disappeared. It just moved somewhere most investors are not looking. And this is not just Meta. Moody's has estimated that the 5 largest hyperscalers have long-term commitments and guarantees not reflected on their balance sheets, totaling approximately $662 billion. That number is larger than all of their combined on-balance sheet debt. The BIS flagged this directly. It warned that this opacity makes it nearly impossible for investors or regulators to accurately assess total leverage in the AI ecosystem. A former BIS senior official said something even more direct. If AI returns disappoint, the unwind could be faster than any banking crisis in modern history, precisely because so much of this financing lives in the non-bank financial system, where there is no deposit insurance and no central bank emergency facility. The debt is real. It has just been made invisible. But even this is not the most uncomfortable part of the story, because there is a fourth layer, and it goes after something that investors trust even more than leverage ratios. It goes after the revenue numbers themselves. Why some of the best-looking AI revenue may not be real. This is the most counterintuitive risk in the entire AI boom, and it is the one the BIS called out most carefully. Here is the basic pattern. A large cloud company invests billions into an AI startup. That AI startup then turns around and spends most of that investment money buying cloud compute from the same company that just funded it. The cloud company records massive AI revenue growth. The AI startup reports cutting-edge model development. Both sides look strong. The market cheers. But follow the money. The same capital just went in a circle. Let me give you the specific documented numbers, because this is not theoretical. Microsoft has invested over $13 billion in OpenAI. According to documents reviewed by multiple outlets, OpenAI spent approximately $12.4 billion back on Microsoft Azure between 2024 and mid-2025, with commitments for hundreds of billions more in future Azure spending. Microsoft reports this as AI cloud revenue growth. Amazon invested $8 billion in Anthropic. Google committed roughly $43 billion to Anthropic across multiple rounds. Anthropic's primary cloud provider is AWS, with a reported $100 billion compute commitment over 10 years. And in May 2026, the information reported that Anthropic signed a $200 billion compute commitment to Google Cloud over 5 years. Let that land for a moment. Google put in $43 billion. Anthropic committed to send $200 billion back to Google. The net flow is $157 billion back toward Google. Google reports this as AI cloud revenue. Anthropic reports this as necessary compute for frontier AI development. Everyone's numbers look impressive. But follow the actual money. It is largely moving in a circle between a small group of interconnected players. Analysts at Bernstein Research, Seaport Global, and Sequoia Capital have all used the exact phrase circular financing to describe this pattern. Now, this is not fraud. The cloud services are real. The deals are legally valid. Nobody is fabricating invoices. But investors still need to ask one hard question. How much of this AI revenue is coming from real end customers? And how much is capital being recycled inside the ecosystem? Sequoia Capital estimated that sustaining current AI infrastructure costs would require approximately $1 trillion in annual real-world AI revenue. Estimates of actual end-user AI product revenue from genuine outside customers run between $50 and $150 billion annually right now. That is a gap of 7 to 20 times. If a significant portion of the revenue numbers driving current AI valuations represents capital circulating between interconnected companies rather than genuine external demand, then the floor of this market is much lower than the headline figures suggest. And if any part of the loop slows down, revenue figures reset across multiple companies simultaneously. How 4 hidden layers stack into one systemic threat. Now bring all 4 layers together, because individually, each one is manageable. Depreciation waves happen. Companies issue debt all the time. Off-balance sheet structures have been used in infrastructure for decades. Circular financing exists in every emerging industry. What the BIS is worried about is what happens when all 4 activate at the same time, which is exactly what would happen if AI commercial revenue disappoints at scale. Revenues miss. Hyperscalers slow CapEx. The circular financing loops lose momentum. SPV structures built on long-term tenancy assumptions come under stress. Private credit funds, which have grown their AI lending from roughly $8 billion a decade ago to approximately $500 billion today, face simultaneous pressure across their portfolios. Banks that lend to those funds absorb secondary losses. Equity valuations reprice. And because U.S. stocks now represent roughly 64% of the entire global equity index and household equity exposure has doubled relative to income since 2010, the wealth effect for ordinary American households would be severe. This is why the BIS used the word systemic. Not because AI will definitely fail, but because the architecture has been built in a way that if it does fail, the damage cannot be contained. Traditional banking crises have backstops, deposit insurance, emergency lending facilities, resolution frameworks built over decades. The private credit vehicles and non-bank financiers at the center of AI infrastructure financing have none of those backstops. The tools policymakers normally reach for are less effective here. The speed of an unwind would be faster. In the early phase, everything looks fine. Revenue is rising, CapEx is rising, AI startups are raising money, cloud deals are getting signed, private credit is earning attractive yields, AI stocks are going up. Everyone looks like a winner. Until the system needs real cash returns. What this means for how you actually invest in AI. Let me be very clear about what I am saying. I am not saying AI is a scam. The technology works. Companies are using it. Productivity is improving. Some AI companies will create enormous long-term value. But real technology can still produce financial bubbles. The internet was real, and the dot-com bubble still happened. Railroads were real, and railroad bubbles still happened. Housing was real, and housing finance still broke the system. So the right question is not, is AI real? That is too easy. The better question is the financial structure around AI becoming too aggressive? Are companies spending today while the earnings hit comes later? Are they borrowing against future demand that has not fully arrived? Are obligations being pushed into structures ordinary investors cannot easily see? Is some cloud revenue being recycled inside the AI ecosystem instead of coming from final end users? And are AI stocks priced as if everything goes right? That is the real risk. The BIS is not saying AI will fail. It is saying the market may be assuming AI success too early, too aggressively, and with too much leverage. That is the difference between a real revolution and a dangerous bubble. In part 2, we will compare today's AI cycle with the dot-com bubble, the railway boom, and other historical manias. We will look at the market signals investors should watch and the possible scenarios for AI stocks from here. If you want to understand the difference between real AI demand and financial engineering, subscribe to TradingKey. I'm Phoebe. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everything. And I'll see you in part 2.